We have been taught that the arts are extra, that they are nice when there's time, that they're a luxury, an afterthought. But what if that's not true? What if creativity isn't just a side note to being human, but one of the ways that we as people become whole? Hey, friends, welcome to Field Notes from the Gravel Road. I am Michelle Hill, and each Saturday I meet you here porch side this morning on a very sunny, very hot porch side for a quiet moment at the intersection of faith, creativity, and becoming. This is not a tutorial. It's not a productivity hack. It's a pause, a moment to realign. We're in week 4 of a series that is shaped by Grace and the Gravel Road's manifesto, a collection of creative truths that we believe. So far, we have covered that creativity is a formational act, not a performative one, that God is inviting us into a life of co-creation with Him. And last week, that the truth that creativity is a birthright and not a specialty. And today we turn to something just a little bit different. We've been talking about spiritual truths, that we are invited into co-creating with God, that we are creative because we are made in His image. But if there's anything that we come to understand when we read the Bible, it is that truth is often layered. So today's topic may sound a little less spiritual, but He has given us this ability, this nature. He's given us creativity. And while we can use it and should use it and do use it to honor Him and reflect His nature, it is also a gift to us. And that's the truth that we're talking about today, that the arts are essential to human growth, health, and wholeness. Creativity is not a luxury. It is how we process pain, encounter wonder, and build resilience, not just for artists, but for all of us. So let's start there. Last week, I had a disagreement that sent me into an emotional spiral. I didn't want it to. I could feel it happening, but the thoughts were racing. My chest was tight. I felt myself unraveling physically, emotionally, mentally. This is a learned response to trauma in my body, and I am working to change that. It derailed the work that I had planned for the rest of the afternoon. So I tried what I have learned to use. I moved. I started cleaning, hoping that a physical task would help my body reset. And it did help a little bit, but not enough. So then I sat down at my desk, opened my novel in progress, and I started to write. Line by line, scene by scene, I could literally feel something shifting in my body, not just in my mind, in my breath. My body remembered how to exhale. My nervous system started to come down from the ledge. I wasn't writing because I had a deadline or because I was inspired. I was writing because I needed to recover myself. I wasn't making art. I was reassembling my heart. And it reminded me that creativity doesn't always need to be profound. Sometimes it just needs to be present. And when it is, it can do the kind of work in us that heals. There are moments in life when words fall short, when pain sits too deep in the body for explanation, when the ache is too raw for a well-crafted prayer, when all you can do, especially if you are a maker, is make something. A mark on a page, a rough song hummed under your breath, a slow movement of your hands through fabric or flour. And somehow that making holds the pain. Not because it solves it, but because it gives it shape. And in giving it shape, it becomes bearable. Isaiah 61:3 speaks of a holy exchange. It says, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. It doesn't say the ashes disappear. It says beauty is given in their place, a sacred trade, not erasure, but transformation. Don't get me wrong. I do not think that that verse was written about creativity. It's about God's transformative power, but it does echo what creativity does. doesn't ease what you've been through or it doesn't erase what you've been through, but it meets it with gentleness. It listens without needing to solve, and it allows the Spirit to minister in places that you may not have words for. Modern science actually agrees with this. They've found that creative expression, especially visual art and movement, can bypass the rational parts of our brain and reach the deeper places, the places where trauma lodges, where grief hides, where longing lives. And I think God meets us there as well, not with a demand to explain or fix ourselves, but with an invitation to begin, to make something from the ashes, even if it's just a line, a color, a texture, or a thread. You don't have to call it art. You don't have to show it to anyone. But when you create, you open a window to healing, a way to process what your spirit may have carried for too long. A sacred trade, not erasure, but transformation. That exchange, beauty for ashes, isn't just a spiritual metaphor. It echoes something that science is beginning to understand as well. For centuries, we have known intuitively that art matters. But over the past 2 decades, science has begun to catch up. There's now a field called neuroaesthetics. It's a meeting between neuroscience, psychology, and the arts. It is dedicated to studying how art affects the human brain. And the findings are clear. The arts do not just entertain, they transform. When you draw or paint or sing or dance or even just engage deeply with beauty, looking and thinking about beautiful things, your brain lights up. Blood flow increases, new neural pathways form, stress hormones decrease, your capacity for resilience and focus and emotional regulation grows. And this happens for everyone. It is not about being talented. It is about being human. Engaging with art activates regions of the brain tied to emotion and memory and empathy, allowing you to process feelings that you may not have the words for. In fact, during trauma, the brain's speech centers can go offline. That's why talk therapy doesn't always work. But the arts bypass language. They can access what's buried and help us heal. That's why music therapy helps Alzheimer's patients access lost memories. It's why soldiers with PTSD can process trauma through mask making. It's why hospitals and clinics can now prescribe museum visits, immersive art and visual experiences for pain management. Not as a distraction, but as a way to restore the self. There's a researcher at Harvard who studies what it means to live a good life, a flourishing life. Flourishing is not about achievement. It is about living a whole, integrated life, emotionally, spiritually, relationally, and physically. According to his work, a flourishing life is built on 5 things. That meant 10 to you viewing. 5 things. Happiness and life satisfaction, mental and physical health, meaning and purpose, character and virtue, and close social relationships. It takes those 5 things to build a flourishing life. And here's the important part for us today. Engagement with the arts supports all 5, not just theoretically, but biologically. Creative practice cultivates curiosity and wonder, awe, creativity, rituals, surprise, and deep, richly sensory environments. All 6 of those things are foundational to human flourishing, and the arts nurture every one. As a side note, I think there is only one other activity that nurtures every single one of those alongside arts, and it is play. So when you reach for a brush or a song or a scrap of fabric, you are not escaping life, you are strengthening it. The arts aren't extra. They are how we stay human in a fractured world. They help us learn better, heal deeper, and live more fully connected to ourselves, to others, and to God. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life." And I used to think about that as kind of a warning. Like guarding meant building fences or putting up walls, protecting what comes in. And that is part of guarding. But the more that I live with it, the more I think guarding your heart also looks like tending the garden of your inner world, watering it with wonder, clearing out what's grown tangled, letting the light back in. And one of the ways we do that best is through creativity, through art, music, journaling, through beauty that's not necessarily useful or efficient, but deeply human. Because creativity gives you a way to stay soft in a world that tries to make you hard. It helps you stay awake in a culture that numbs. It helps you keep returning to your own heart, not to judge it, but to listen to it. And that listening matters. In a world that moves fast and demands more, creative practice becomes a form of resistance, a quiet way of saying that I am more than what I produce. My heart is worth tending. My soul is worth guarding. So whether it's writing one line in a journal, arranging wildflowers in a chipped vase, or stitching in silence when the day winds down, those small acts, they really, really matter. They guard your heart. They nourish the wellspring. And that kind of creativity is not just decoration. Sometimes we think of creativity as a solitary thing. Sometimes we do it alone in quiet corners. And while that is often true, it's not the whole story. Because art has always been a way that we come together. Philippians 2:1-2 invites us to be united in spirit and purpose. That unity doesn't always come through doctrine or debate. Sometimes it comes through shared beauty, shared emotion, a song we all know, a mural in a hurting neighborhood, a table set with intention. Art can bypass the barriers. It can say what we are afraid to say out loud and let someone else nod in recognition and say, me too. Think about it. The hymn that your grandmother sang in her kitchen, the quilt passed down stitch by stitch from hand to hand, the way children draw before they can speak. These are not just acts of expression. They are acts of belonging. When we create together, when we sing and write and build, craft, paint, we build bridges. We form shared language. We say to one another, you are not alone in this. And in a divided, distracted world, that kind of connection is critically important. I have an art teacher friend who mentioned recently that she realizes that she rarely creates alone, that her joy in making is making in community, making with others. So whether your creative work ever hangs in a gallery or not, if it brings someone closer to themselves, to others, or to God, it is critically important. Maybe you're listening and thinking, that sounds beautiful, wonderful, but I am not an artist. You might not sell paintings. You might not have a studio. You might not even call what you do art. But if you have ever shaped something with your hands, poured emotion into a pie crust, or doodled while your heart was sorting itself out, you are creative. Creativity is not about talent or titles. It's not about being good. It's about being willing and being human, willing to respond to beauty, to longing, and to God. You don't need permission. You already have it, because you don't have to be an artist to live a creative life. You just have to pay attention and respond with your hands and your head and your heart. That response, that's the offering, not the polished outcome, but the faithful participation. You are made in the image of a creator. So anything that you do that brings shape to truth, to tenderness or meaning, even quietly, even just for yourself, is holy work. And if you want to go deeper into this, I'll link an earlier episode where we actually talked about it more fully, the whole I'm not an artist thing. So here's the invitation I want to leave you with today. What if your creativity, your making, your tending, your expressing, what if that is part of what makes your life whole and healthy? What if the simple act of creating something, however small or unseen, is actually how your heart begins to beat again? We live in a world that glorifies speed, rewards output, and often shames anything that doesn't have a clear productive result. But God doesn't always work like that. He offers beauty for ashes. He whispers in the quiet. He honors small beginnings. And he meets us in the work of our hands, even when we're not sure what we're making yet. You don't need a plan. You don't need a platform. You don't need a perfect outcome. You just need to begin. Because creativity is not self-indulgent. It's soul tending. It's how we stay open when the world would rather that we shut down. It's how we hold space for what's tender and holy and becoming. It's how we listen, how we process, and how we return. So as you step into this week, here are a few questions to carry with you. What art or beauty has helped you hold something unspoken? And is there a creative act that you've been dismissing because it feels small or silly? This reflection has felt something that you want more of. I'm going to say that sentence over. If this reflection has felt like something that you want more of, you might enjoy Grace Note, which is an email I send every Sunday with thoughts about the creative life. So you can sign up through the link in the description below or at my website or at graceandthegravelroad.com. And of course, I will be right here again next Saturday on the patio if you would like to come on back. I would love to have you. Until then, wherever your journey takes you this week, may grace meet you there. Hey, Joanna, good to see you this morning. And Vicki, good morning. South Dakota and out Southwest. Good to see you guys. I'm so glad that you joined me here today. I hope that was helpful for you, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.